At this point, it's now my pleasure to introduce a leader uh, that I've had the pleasure of working with for years. This individual really needs no introduction to many of us, but I'm going to do it anyway. Clarence Anthony is the CEO and executive director of the National League of Cities, the largest and oldest organization representing America's cities, towns, and villages and their leaders. Under his leadership, NLC helped deliver billions of dollars of direct federal relief through the CARES Act and the historic American Rescue Plan Act to help support local governments and respond, recover, and rebuild from the COVID-19 pandemic. During this time, NLC also ushered the passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, delivering transformative investments in transportation, broadband, water, and more to communities across the country. NLC is also celebrating their 100th anniversary this year. We want to be sure we note that. Mr. Anthony began his career in public service as mayor of South Bay, Florida, for 24 years. Clarence has served as president of the Florida League of Cities and the National League of Cities. Following his time in office, Clarence represented local governments on the world stage as the founding treasurer and interim manager of United Cities and Local Governments. He later founded Anthony Government Solutions, a firm focusing on strategic visioning, policy development, and management restructuring for government and private sector organizations. I count Clarence as a good friend, a colleague, and a mentor, and I'm just happy to turn it over to you, Clarence. Thank you for joining us.
Alan, thank you so much for having me, and I consider you a friend as well. Tell Missy I said hello, because I can't forget. And thanks, her, for following me on social media. I really appreciate the support. Also, I'd say I welcome my new board member, your president, as well, to our board. Council member Vanorny is a new member of the board of directors of the National League of Cities. I'm just honored that you guys would provide me the space to just talk to you about this major issue that we're facing in America. And that is really the hate and incivility that is coming to our doors every day. You know, in my role as National League of Cities executive director, I get a chance to really talk to you all and talk to our members about this challenge. And I tell you, I'm thankful that I'm in this role, and I'm inspired by what I hear from you, how you're leading. But you know, I know it's more difficult because the role of local leadership has changed over the last decades. And I've seen it from where I sit, actually. You know, being a former mayor, being executive director, I see more polarization and less conversations occurring in our communities from east to west. And as you all know, we're living in a world now that it's increasingly divided, where it feels like there's no civility and no conversations. And that change that is occurring is hurting our way of leading our communities. And I hope that my comments and the things that I'll share with you will actually help you to think about ways in which we can change that phenomenon. You know, as city leaders, we are assuming more risk as a simple fact of our job. And it requires more level of courage than it did in any time in my history of being involved in public policy. You know, it used to be at the national level. We'd watch television and we'd see all the things going on in Washington, D.C. But that trend really is starting to impact our communities. And it's, to me, I looked at it from a perspective of how it impacts you as a leader, but also it's harassing your kids. It's impacting the city council meetings. It's also impacting you at the grocery stores. And it's also, to me, I think back with my term of local leadership, the business of City Hall occurred at City Hall, not in the front yards of our city leaders. But today, things are different. And according to a survey that we did in 2021, the National League of Cities found that 81% of local officials in the US say they had experienced some form of harassment or threats or violence. And 89% says that it's gotten worse during their time in office. You're seeing it in a terms of it's impacting you in terms of the ways in which you're creating public engagement. You're trying to find ways to create transparency through public meetings and social media, but that is even a way that people are engaging in harassment. That's a major problem because local government is all about solving practical problems, and anything that interferes with respectful communication to achieve these goals makes our jobs more difficult. While we're dealing with harassment ourselves, we're also having to confront growing hate and extremism in our community. You know, every day in headline after headline, we're seeing a horrific rise in anti-Semitic, Islamic phobic, as well as racially motivated hate crimes. Many of us are really targeting ourselves, being targeted and experiencing attacks firsthand in our communities. Just about a month ago, the FBI released its annual hate crimes statistics report, which showed that the number of hate crimes committed increased by 794 between 2021 and 2022. Another report by California State University, published in August, showed that hate crimes in a sample of the nation's largest cities, it had increased 22% over the last year. Let's take a moment to think about that. 22% is a huge increase year over year. When most of you ran for office, I can think back. You ran because maybe there was a problem in potholes in the road, police or fire services, or crime. You didn't even imagine that the issue of incivility, the rise in extremism and hate, would be something that you would have to deal with and navigate. But the real fact of matter is, unfortunately, you do. And we need to do it as local leaders because nobody else will do it. You know, this kind of hostility is exactly why we need you. We need strong leaders. We need strong leadership now more than ever. We need leadership that doesn't fan the flames of division, but works to bring our communities closer together. We need mayors, council members, city managers. We need neighborhood leaders who are committed to strengthening the civic fabric of our cities, towns, and villages, and to lead by example. Even in the face of the most difficult issues, we must remember that we are capable of doing this because nobody else is prepared to lead like local leaders lead during this time. We must remember that our cities are, by the nature of them, are unifying places, places that we raise our families, places that we talk to our neighbors. The residents in our communities want to put the best foot forward to solve these problems. And you are the ones who can absolutely set the table to help them lead through this difficult time. But we can only achieve that kind of unity in our communities is by leading with civility, leading with our heart, leading with our minds and our vision in our cities, towns, and villages. As local leaders, this moment and time is our moment to step up and to demonstrate those values of civility, not just for the constituents who vote for us today, but for our next generation of local leaders who are growing up in our communities and learning from you every day. And even when things feel overwhelming as local leaders, there are some concrete actions that we must take to lead our communities, to create an environment that fosters productivity and allows us to get things done, the business of your community. So what is NLC doing? At our annual meeting in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago, we held a workshop for local leaders on strategies for confronting hate in our nation. We thought it would be a popular topic, but we sadly have to say that we had a standing room only session with over 150 council members, mayors, administrators, and other leaders talking with us about this issue because they feel the weight of the challenge that is occurring every day in their community. And they feel like that weight is on them to sit down with leaders from throughout America and say, what are you doing? What examples are you using within your community? So I want to talk to you about some practical things that I think you can do in Iowa to continue to lead on this issue. First and foremost, we've got to walk the talk. We must model what civility looks like and lead by example. Our citizens watch our city council meetings and our commission meetings. They have to see us respecting each other, communicating in a way that is respectful and kind and listening. That is what leadership looks like. That's a real example. We also need to hold, I would say, annual meetings or retreats for our leadership. I think when I implemented that when I was mayor, it gave me an opportunity to get to know my colleagues as individuals. I was able to hear their stories of why they ran for office. What did they want to achieve? And most importantly, I got to know them not as mayor, not as council member, but I got to know them as Alan. I got to know them as Ashley or Clarence. And that broke down that barrier. And it helped me to understand who they were, how they grew up, and what drove them to public service. So these leadership retreats are essential to make sure that we're able to communicate. It also sets us up to promote civility as a core value in our community. So in terms of how we manage our meetings, how we engage in our community, if we're able to really say at the beginning of our meetings or our terms, here's the values of our communities, the value of respect, the value of inclusivity, the value of engaging and having transparency in our community are some of the examples of some of the values that I think you can think through. I also think that we have to be able to have a common code of how we're going to conduct our public meetings. The Municipal Association of South Carolina and the National Civic League both have an entire handbook that I highly recommend that you check out because they outline specific things as well. A couple other things. I think that we have to really think about taking a pledge of civility, maybe adopting a resolution that commits to a practice of promoting civility as stewards of your community. And then I think meeting people where they are, holding meetings in the community, public forums, so that you can go to the residents and they can see that you are really open to engaging publicly, so that the information is not translated through misinformation and facts that are not facts, but actually you being a public leader saying, I'm here to talk with you about what we're doing in our community and how it's going to impact you. And those are meaningful public engagement strategies. These strategies are just a few of the things that I think we can do as local leaders to combat the incivility that we're all facing as a foundation so that we can build better communities, build ways of engaging our residents. But the bottom line is it will build a level of respect that I think every citizen, every municipal leader, every staff that works in every local government would appreciate. But there's also so much more we can learn from each other. So the conversations that we're having at this conference, this convening, the framework that Alan and his team is setting up helps us to be able to create a strong network of local leaders who have the same ideas about ways we can improve civility in communities in Iowa. You know, you're in the trenches, and I want to be with you on this journey that we're all working to make our nation a nation that values civility. While the expectations of what it will take as a local leader are higher than ever than today, NLC and the Iowa League, we're in partnership with one another to provide you with the resources that you need. Both of our organizations are places where you can always come together to learn from each other, to be able to share your experiences, but also it's a place to find innovation that you can return home and implement in your community. It's also, I think, a place that you can just rest and pause because you know that there are other people who are dealing with the same issues and that you are not alone as you combat this crisis of incivility. We can do it together. I think about it all the time. If you want something done right, give it to local leaders. We can do it because America needs you right now. They need all of us as public servants and local government who can demonstrate what real leadership looks like, what inclusive leadership looks like, what respect looks like. Times like these, it's hard. It is very hard right now. But I can tell you one thing, I get inspired when I see the solidarity that we have as local leaders, the strength that we have in civic engagement within our communities. This is our time to be stronger together. And I'm so passionate about this, and I hope you know why. We got so much going on in our nation. And sometimes we look at what we see in the news and we say, that can't happen in our community. That didn't happen in our community. There's no way incivility or hate or extremism can occur in our communities. And that's my hope, that it don't occur in your community. But our responsibility as the National League of Cities and the Iowa League of Cities is to make sure that you are prepared to lead, that you have the resources, if it occurs in your community, to lead, that your residents would be able to look at you as a leader and be able to say, that's my mayor, that's my commissioner, that's my council member, that's my city staff. They are helping us through these difficult times. I want to tell you, I'm more committed than ever because I believe that everyone deserves the right to feel comfortable, to raise their kids, to be able to feel as if that's their home in a safe place where they're respected and valued. And I want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity and say that we're in this together, and no other level of government can show an example of what real leadership, real inclusivity, real civility looks like than local leaders. Thank you all very much. And Alan, thank you again for having me here, and happy holidays to everybody.